We had such an interesting conversation with Annette Verpillot, and we literally could have kept talking for hours. Annette is the founder of PosturePro, a health company specializing in restoring the brain-body connection. She's a Canadian entrepreneur, therapist, public speaker, and internationally recognized posturalogist. We learned a mind-blowing amount of information about the importance of posture in the realm of total body health and fitness. We loved every second of this fascinating conversation, and we know you will too. Let's jump right in. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Annette, we are so excited to have you today. We were just talking before we hit record about how this particular topic around posture isn't something that we've tackled in a really long time. And it's so important, regardless of whether you're in the field of fitness or not. If you're in the field of health, posture is important. And so we're really excited to dive in. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and give us the name the way you like it pronounced. But really what we'd love is your background story, your origin story on how you became this posture expert.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Annette Verpillot, and I call myself a posture specialist. I have a background in rehabilitation, and I'm the founder of a company that's located in Montreal, Canada, called PosturePro. And I like to think of PosturePro as being at the forefront of redefining the relationship between our brain and body, or at least definitely teaching people or letting people know that posture is all about the brain and how the brain projects onto the body and how both work together to influence posture and longevity. So we teach a variety of courses to help introduce these concepts to healthcare practitioners. And we also offer products to the general population to help people deal with chronic pain and just being better aligned and having better posture.
Ooh, education and products. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. It's hard not to be like kind of micromanaging my posture right now. I'm feeling
I'm doing the same thing. Check.
I'm really excited to talk. I always think it's interesting to talk about the connection of the brain and the body. I do want us to get into that, but can you give us a light touch, or let's go deep if we're ready to, on the relationship between posture and longevity? My ears perked up when you said that. I feel like maybe we can, I can maybe intellectualize how that works, but how do you explain this?
So we have, as humans, these internal mechanisms that help us fight gravity. And let's define the concepts that hopefully we'll be talking about or can further elaborate in this podcast are the concepts of what I like to refer to as sensory receptors. So what is a sensory receptor? We all have them. If we're human, you have them. Anyone listening to this has these sensory receptors. It's basically an organ or body part that takes information from the outside world and relays it back to your brain. So that's a sensory receptor. And the purpose of the sensory receptor is to give us a sense of proprioception. What is proprioception? In short, in simple, it's body awareness. Where are we in space? So the main sensory receptors are the feet. How are you distributing your body weight on your feet? Number one. Number two is your eyes. So we're not talking about refraction disorders, although that could influence the way that you move, but we're mostly talking about the muscles of the eyes. How is your eyeball moving in your skull? And then you have another receptor called the inner ear. And the inner ear is basically, I want you to think of a bottle of water. The bottle of water would represent your head, and the inner ear is the liquid in the water, in the bottle. And every single time the bottle moves, every single time your head moves, when you're walking, jogging, trying to catch a ball or whatnot, the water is moving and is sending information to your brain. So those three sensory receptors, feet, eyes, and inner ear, are actually shaping the way that you move. They're affecting the way that you stand. Now, here's the thing. The inner ear per se, some of those little receptors in the inner ear, because there's different parts of the inner ear, which we don't need to get into for the podcast, but they're constantly sending information to your nervous system. And this brings the topic of why did I stop doing what I was trained to do as a rehab specialist, is because once I understood that those sensory receptors are always sending information to my muscles, and as a rehab specialist, I quickly came to realize that I was only managing symptoms.
Mm.
And I mean, it's great, and there's nothing wrong with managing symptoms, but if you're one of those people that strives to find the true cause and especially a solution to the problem, then you must look into the nervous system. In the context of anything, really, we're talking about fitness and longevity here, but it's in the context of life, because the nervous system dictates who we are, how we sleep, how we react in any given situation, and how we move.
Wow.
So those sensory receptors, going back to the feet, to the eyes, to the inner ear, are now into modern medicine separated into different professions.
Oh, yeah.
You have an optometrist, you have a podiatrist, you have orthodontics, because the jaw also plays a role in this, and we can talk about that later if you wish. And you have a ENT, which is ear, nose, and throat specialist. Now, we need all of these professions, don't get me wrong. But the missing link, if I may say, is that none of those professions are even aware that these body parts work together to and affect our posture and movement. So where PosturePro comes in is that our goal is to educate people. I believe that anyone has the right to choose the best approach for themselves. And the paradox was, well, how do we let people know that this even exists? How do we start teaching people something that is extremely complex, like neurology, in the context of movement and rehabilitation and fitness? And that's why we created different programs. We have a program that is much more in depth. And then we have little programs that can kind of give you like snippets of different parts of the body and how they could interact as far as movement and posture and stability. And at the end of the day, I don't want to say they kind of like overlap. They all have the same theme, which is the nervous system, but they do teach you very specific things in regards to what you can potentially do for those specific body parts. But the aim is really to introduce anyone to the concept of a brain-based approach.
I'm just thinking I'm thinking about this now on this integrated approach, right? So for example, I'm standing at my standing desk and I have a treadmill underneath me, which I'm just standing on. I really never do walk on it, but I think, what kind of signal would I be sending to my brain if my feet were moving, but my eyes were looking at the screen and I'm typing? That's such a mismatch. Mismatch from what the body is expecting, right?
Yes, so I love the way that you're thinking, but I'm going to challenge it and have you think even further. As humans, we can challenge, as therapists, we can challenge the nervous system through muscular exercise. We can get stronger, definitely, but if we go into fitness and training with an imbalance in our body, we are in essence reinforcing this imbalance. Right. Unless we target the brain through the 3 sensory receptors we just spoke of. So here's the thing. If you're sitting down and you're in a flexed posture and you do this all day long, you can become flexor dominant, because after all, repetition creates posture, right? To create a habit, you must repeat it over and over again. But if at the base you're already in balance and you have, for example, an anterior pelvic tilt, before you've actually started sitting down all day long, or before you even got that job, it's just going to multiply or amplify the speed at which you will start to integrate that forward flexor dominant type of posture. So the idea is to change the way that someone relates to gravity. If you change the way that they relate to gravity, and this can only be done, there's no other way to do it. Believe me, I'm trying to find a way. The only way to change the way that someone relates to gravity is to stimulate all 3 sensory receptors. What are they? Feet, eyes, inner ear. At the same time, here's the catch, for an extended period of time, which is how long? 10,000 hours.
Wow.
Yes.
So clearly not done all at once.
Yeah, well, it's the equivalent of 6 weeks. If we were to put that in realistic time, excluding the time that we're sleeping, it's for a period of 6 weeks. Why 6 weeks? Well, because neuroplasticity happens over the course of repetition. Repetition creates neuroplasticity. So to change someone's habits, you must change the way that they relate to gravity. You must affect the inner ear, which is constantly sending information to my erector spinae. And that can't be challenged or changed with exercise alone.
Right. You know, and just listening to what you were saying earlier too, in terms of your understanding how here I am, what you've been trained to do in terms of, restoration and therapy, you've realized that you're really just treating the symptom. And there are more and more practitioners that are awakening to this across all sorts of modalities and specialties. It's not a majority. It's not, but more and more people are waking up to this. And as health coaches, we're deeply in this camp. Some of us are still working within the symptomatology realm, but as a way to use that as a motivator, really, to kind of get to the root and motivate the client to kind of restore what the body's missing. But I know that you likely see this in Canada. We see it here in the US as well. But for many patients, choice has been taken out of our hands. So whether it's an insurance company that's deciding what the standard of care is that they're willing to pay for, or the government, that they've decided with the standard of care that they're willing to pay for, we now have patients and clients who are just finding choice is taken away from them. Even if they can financially pay out of pocket in many cases, they don't know. They don't know that the option's there. They're just like, here's my options. And then education has been taken away from the patient. They don't know what they don't know. They've been taught to abdicate their care to some sort of specialist. And it sounds to me like what you're trying to do within your own practice is bring those two things back. Bring the education back to the participant, the client, the patient on, hey, you have more options. Here's what's really going on. And here are your choices. So empowering that patient. So I love what you're doing here. It's so right in our wheelhouse too, right, Erin, in terms of what health coaches are trying to do. I absolutely love it. And I want to bring this back to kind of making this connection to longevity too. So these sensory receptors, our feet, our eyes, our inner ear, and how all of those integrate. Because if we don't, the ... is, where's the disruption here with longevity? Is it just that we see degradation at an earlier age? How would you articulate that?
You will end up wasting more energy prematurely. Mitochondrial energy at the cellular level. So if you waste more energy, let's compare energy to money in the bank. And we have a budget every single day. We have, 2,000 points of energy to spend to go about our day and do whatever it is that we do. And if you start off your day instead of starting off at 2,000 points, you're starting off at 1,500, then you're already at a deficit. So how would one know if they are already at a deficit? Well, there would be two things I would say. Do you wake up? Do you have pain? It's three things. Do you have pain? Yes or no? Intermittent pain. Just intermittent is already a sign. Aside from injury, right? We're going to exclude the traumatic injuries that have occurred. Just, do you have pain? Do you wake up with pain? And are you tired towards the second part of the day? When do you feel tired? Are you tired? You could be tired in the morning, which would be indicative of something else. But more specifically, more broad, do you feel like exhausted at around 2-3 o'clock? So that's energy expenditure. And we can actually measure it. We have a force plate at PosturePro where we've have very specific numbers that are allocated to someone, to the way that someone is fighting gravity, where we can see if the vestibular system is overworking or underactive, if there's even an imbalance with the jaw, the way that the teeth are fitting in together, the center of mass, the center of gravity. Gravity passes through the body of L3. And the moment that the mechanics of your pelvis changes, the line of gravity going through the body of that vertebrae will change. The moment that this changes, you're wasting more energy. You're no longer fighting gravity efficiently. And this is where, I mean, some will argue that mitochondrial fatigue is the beginning of any disease, or if not all diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you can add lifestyle choices, stress, genetics, and everything else on top of that. And then you may end up with someone who has their longevity that is affected. We can also talk about even oxygenation to the brain, the jaw, the position of the lower jaw. The jaw is a sensory receptor in the sense that if it is dysregulated, the lower jaw, it's going to affect your head posture. That's going to go back to that vestibular system. That's going to go back to your feet. That's going to affect your muscles. So the jaw is a component of that. And the position of the jaw will affect the position of your cervical spine. You have a vertebrae that's feeding oxygen to your spine on both sides of your neck. And if that is squished or moved forward, or if there's constraint in neck movement, potentially that can even affect your blood flow. So I don't want to get too technical and too dramatic, but all of those things can affect your quality of life. So it all goes back to how would one do this? Well, every single trainer out there must, and I'm going to insist because I've been saying this since 2006, and I've had a lot of heartaches about this. I've gone through a lot of different types of opinions since 2006. We're now in 2023, but I will say what I was saying then, and I will repeat now. Every single trainer out there needs to start with a postural assessment of their client before training them. Mm-hmm. You must have a general understanding of how their nervous system, the health of their nervous system in the context of that fitness, the same way they would do their testing, range of motion, muscle testing, and whatnot to give them a fitness program. If this is not done, we are, when I say we, I'm talking about, the fitness population, we are training our clients into injury. We are feeding that system. It's a catch-22. It's a catch-22. Yeah, fitness is good. We must work out, but we are speeding up that injury. And I don't need to tell you, I mean, I understand that healthcare in Canada is different than in the United States, but despite the billions that are being poured into healthcare and rehab, I mean, most of the treatments that are available, as we've been saying, are pain management.
Right.
The idea is to give someone more time. The only thing that you cannot buy is time. And if you have to, even if your treatment is refunded by healthcare or it's not, you have to go and you are managing your symptoms once a week, once a month, whatever the case is. Never mind the money, that's costing you time. Mm-hmm. Time to drive there, time you spend there, that's time that you're not working, time to drive back home. And if someone were to sit down and actually do the math, it actually costs much, much more than just $65 for a session of, physiotherapy, for example. So the programs and the solutions that we offer are literally a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It might be a little bit more upfront that you have to pay for a product. I understand that, but it needs to be looked at long term. And for trainers, for them, it's about helping their clients get faster results, pain-free, injury-free, which means they're keeping their clients longer, and they're doing preventative rehabilitation, not management, preventative rehabilitation. And the good news of this is that they'll probably end up getting tons of referrals. Mm-hmm. So you're multiplying your business in that sense, but at the same time, you're actually really helping people in the way. And I'm not suggesting that what's being done now is not helping people, but I'm just saying we can even help them even more.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And why not? If there is a way to do more, better. I mean, this is what evolution is about. We're constantly striving to do better and more at a quicker space. Well, you can't have quicker than a nervous system. That's 114 miles per second, and that's how quickly you see the result. 114 miles per second. So this is why when you're working with a young person, an athlete, and you'll see me do some, and I don't know if you guys saw me do that, some eye exercises, or you'll see me put therapeutic insoles under their feet, which I do in all of my videos. So it's very easy to find me doing that out there. And you'll see their shoulder go from this to this, and you're like, what just happened? Well, what happened is the nervous system, 114 miles per second. In cases, and I'll give an example for someone to understand, to give a little bit more perspective, someone who has Parkinson's disease, their nervous system, their brain is affected.
Yeah.
If you have a stroke, half of your body is paralyzed because the brain controls the muscles. It's not the other way around. So with Parkinson's disease, the point I was trying to make is when the nervous system is compromised, that 114 miles per second is a little bit slower. But in any case, you'll be able to get really phenomenal results. And this is where I urge any healthcare practitioner to look into our courses, because that's what's going to give anyone the competitive edge.
Yeah.
No one is doing this. And if they're talking about it, well, like I said, we've been doing it since 2006.
I just think, I'm so geeking out on this in so many ways. And I'm thinking through, your point of view, which is like anybody in the movement space, personal trainer, movement specialist, whatever you're calling yourself, start with a postural assessment. Because if you don't, then whatever pattern this person came into, now you're training that into them. You're carving that neural groove deeper. So now we're besieged by injury, pain. Now we're going to the physiotherapist to work through this injury. So like I'm in this tailspin right now. This is why this is so present for me. I'm in the world of this treatment protocol for some pain I'm having. And not only the money and the time, but this is hard to, maybe you can get this, but this is hard. This is what I was thinking when you were telling that story. Not only the money and the time, but my belief. I'm like, okay, this is going to fix it. I'm buying in fully. Like, I'm just going to get this injury fixed and I'm going to move on back to my activity level. But then in 3 months' time, I'm going to be back with something else. Something else. It's not even that this injury is going to flare back up. Something else is going to flare back up. Oh, I guess that's aging. Okay, more money, more time, more mental energy believing that I'm fixing this. And I said this verbatim to my physiotherapist last time I saw him. I said, there must be some way I can come in every 6 months and you do an analysis on me to tell me when things are going to break before they break, because I'm actually tired of coming in here when things break. He's like, yeah, well, we don't really know how to do that. You do have to come in here with a symptom that we can address. And it's frustrating. Like, I don't want to come in here with symptoms. I frankly don't want symptoms anymore. Like, I'm not. So this really is exciting because, it makes so much sense. I think anybody who has even a basic knowledge of physiology, biomechanics is like, can clock this. Like, yeah, right. If we don't have the body moving properly and we start putting it through movement patterns, it's breaking down. But I also love that you're referring to the nervous system, because I think when I think of nervous system, I think, oh, like parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. But we're talking about that spinal column, the actual structure of the nervous system too, which we forget about sometimes, and how that's all set up to be working with gravity and unimpeded through with gravity, right? This beautiful system of nerves and the brain, and how it all runs through the spinal column, and how that gets out of line. Now we're lacking oxygenation and the mitochondrial energy to keep the body going against this friction. My mind has been blown. I have had my mind blown already, and we're only like 10 minutes into this conversation.
What I wanted to add to, what I'd love to add to that is, it's not just about, I mean, there are some studies out there that say through chiropractic adjustments, which leads to better spinal fluidity, which is what you were just describing, Erin, is so when the spine is better aligned, I think it's I don't remember the exact number, but something ridiculous like 20 billion or 40 billion neurofeedback to the brain in that instant.
Wow.
So the spine does activate the nervous system. And if there was a way, which there is, which we do, I mean, the before and after that we have on our website just show I'm not saying that this is the case with everyone, because everyone's brain and nervous system is different, but more often than not, we have really apparent changes in a clinical setting with someone's posture and spine. So this empowers anybody to see, wow, when you train and you start to see results and you start to see your abs for the first time, and you're motivated, you're passionate about it. Well, this is extremely empowering within the session. And we can see spines that are being corrected with children, with adults, with the elderly, with, men, women, toddlers. And it's actually really nice to understand the impact that you're having on their brain. If you're helping a kid better activate parts of their brain, what that means for that kid is they'll have better understanding in school.
Yeah.
So that's huge. That's just another topic altogether. If we do that with an elderly, let's just talk about the elderly for once. What kills them is not age, it's falling.
Yep.
It's falling. Why do they fall? Well, because their peripheral system, Erin, as you were just describing, ages. Our system will age with time. We are all decaying by the minute. So what can we do right now to delay decaying by the minute as much as we can? Well, posture correction is at the top of the list, never spoken about. We don't know why. We just don't know why. I don't know if it's like an underground. It's like, it makes no sense. So tapping into that nervous system, we can increase the longevity of our grandparents by doing this. And the sensory receptors that we talk of, this is where it becomes really cool. If we're going to talk about we're going to tap into the parasympathetic system, is that they feed information in our primitive brain, in our brainstem. And the vagus nerve, the origins of the vagus nerve, sympathetic, parasympathetic, is in the brainstem. So you can actually have an extreme sense of calmness throughout your body by doing something as silly or simple as, I don't want to say silly because it's not, but as simple as eye exercises. Because you will have an effect on it's just another way to tap into the system. But the benefits of doing it through eye exercises is that it's also going to have an effect on your posture. So you're killing two birds with one stone. So you'll have an effect on your power. And a lot of people will say to me, wow, I feel like I have videos on online consult. Like it's really people are just like, oh my God, I could breathe. I could finally breathe. It, my hair, I have shivers thinking about it because this is what I'm talking. This is life-changing, game-changing for anyone.
Yeah. You mentioned though, like posture's at the top of the list. Posture's at the top of the list for solving all these downstream health issues that we're having. And you said, why is posture correction not more well known? Why is it not more well known? What's your hunch? Like, let's answer this hypothetical. Hey, it's Erin, co-host of Health Coach Radio. I've trained men and women of all different body types and skill levels, and take it from me, women are made for strength. They may just have a different way of getting there than men do. With the Primal Health Coach Institute's Strength Training for Women Specialist certification, you'll be able to address the needs, challenges, questions, and goals most relevant to women. You'll learn how to design a training program, and then you'll develop one. You'll also learn how to co-create individual eating strategies for clients and how to navigate potentially sensitive topics like menopause, reproductive cycles, hormone-related dysfunction, and diet culture. If you want to empower women to become fitter and stronger, then visit primalhealthcoach.com and learn more about our specialization in strength training for women.
I believe we're in a Western system where the system is built to cost money. It's all about money.
No, I would
we will make more money from you if you are sick and unhealthy. And I think we understand that even from a nutritional perspective. than we would if you go into a preventative system. And it does begin with the parents, which then affects the kids, which will then affect the future generations that that are currently in place. So I believe it is it's part of the, it's part of the plan to keep us right. But through these podcasts and through these opportunities, hopefully, we must educate people and at least let them know that there are other ways. And that's why it's extremely empowering. Anyone at home right now can do some eye exercises and can test, for example, range of motion. You have pain right now. Okay, great. Where's your pain? Where is your pain? Do you feel it right now? Okay, great. Identify it. Put a number to it. Now try to associate a movement to that specific pain. Once you've done that, stop everything, do some eye exercises. And I have tons on my social media channels. Do those eye exercises properly without clenching your teeth. Relax. Just focus on it for 45 seconds only, and then reassess your pain. Tell me if it improved, meaning did the pain decrease? And that's extremely empowering because it costs $0 and 45 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to close the loop on that, because it is a systemic issue, obviously. And I think a big part of it is the health consumer has been programmed. So we think about this through our listeners, which might be a personal trainer or movement specialist. It's like, hey, start every session with a postural assessment. And they're like, no one's paying for that. People are coming here to lift weights and get swole. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, even the health consumer is like, what am I doing here? Eye exercise, so because the systemic issue is, yes, the healthcare system is not honed for prevention, but also people have been trained to not give a damn about prevention very much. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a bigger systemic issue. Like, I'd be curious, like the clients who do come to you, are they some kind of outlier that's more woke than the general population? Or who are these? I think that's what personal trainers would be up against, quite frankly.
I hear what you're saying. I'm going to say that I've made a living out of it, but I did live through what you just said right now. And the answer would lie into how the benefits that you're exposing to your clients. If you just say, hey, brain-based, and you don't explain or show what it could do, no one's going to care. However, everyone has pain.
I mean, if we go back to what we always teach at our school, Erin, the idea of solving a problem, and making the case for how you have the solution to that problem. That's what people buy. So if it's, I just want to lose weight and get swole, okay, great. Let's talk about how these particular exercises are free. They are easy to do. They are not painful, and they're going to set the stage for us to accomplish everything you want to accomplish. Look, I don't want you to be afraid to say what you really think. I think look, our audience is health coaches, and I'm probably being conservative. More than half, it's likely the majority, are in health coaching because they understand that the conventional medical fitness diet industry is broken, that it's all profit driven. It's designed for profit. It's not designed for outcomes. I wish I could say it differently. We would love to know that the medical industry is actually built around positive outcomes. And I think at one point it was. Right? A couple hundred years ago or 100 years ago, it was. But now, in order to advance and find new medications and technology, we've allowed industry to come in to fund it. And now we are no longer based on outcomes. We're based on profit. And I think that our listeners here totally get that. So I don't want you to shy away from just kind of saying how you feel. But here's what I think. I think a lot of times the proof is in the pudding. That if we can share with patients, clients, however you run your business, one or two kind of tips that will make an immediate difference for them, and the patient or the client is like, oh my gosh, show me more, what would those be? One of the things we talked about before we recorded were like these kind of practical tips for aligning these things, or 7 steps to biohacking your posture. These are some things that I think are worth talking about, because if coaches or trainers or practitioners can share a few that they find are particularly effective for their target audience, I think they're sold.
Well, I think that some of the trainers are already doing, they're already doing in their sessions with their clients, they're probably already doing what I'm going to suggest. For example, a posture self-assessment. I see on social media a lot of trainers talking about the position, the forward head posture, the position of where are your ears positioned in comparison to your shoulder or your back, or do the test, the wall test, or are you right? So they're already doing that type of self-assessment. The bridge or the challenge will be, can they link that self-assessment for the benefit of the client to the sensory receptors?
Mm-hmm.
If a trainer is able to link what they're currently already doing in their practice to the sensory receptors and bridge the gap and make the client understand that their forward head posture is caused by their eye or maybe their jaw, the position of their jaw, the way that their teeth fit together, then if anything, people will be intrigued. And social media is all about capturing people's attention, right? Saying things differently, doing things differently. Well, this is an untapped market. No
Mm-hmm.
one's doing it. It's actually a huge potential. It's not the other way around. So any trainer that is an entrepreneur with this mindset that will be able to keep on doing what they're doing, but just add an additional twist to it, whether they're assessing their movement or even do the testing that I just said with their clients. Oh, you have shoulder pain. Let's see your shoulder flexing. How's that feel? Okay, can you look here? Can you do that? How's that feel now? And the client's gonna say, what did you just do? And boom, you just engaged a conversation. And now the trainer is going to start talking in terms that no one else is talking about. Simple terms. You don't need to delve into the neurology that could be intimidating. Simple terms. That's why we created very affordable programs. We're taming it down to simple terms that the general public understands. If you're able to tame it down and make that link, then we begin to change the system.
Yeah.
Then we begin to create a general awareness, a familiarity for trainers, clients, asking about what's this brain-based approach. And this is where we start to change the game.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Yeah. So can we maybe walk through an example? Let's say there's a health coach or a trainer that's working with a client that's maybe complaining of this sort of like chronic shoulder neck pain. This is super, super common for those of us that are in front of a computer all day, right? And so where, a typical trainer might, especially this forward head posture and be able to, but how might a trainer or a coach kind of make that connection to the sensory? What language would you use? What eye exercise might you suggest to kind of really paint that picture?
So I'm going to give you concrete examples. Okay. So let's talk about forward head posture. That's something that's common. Everybody understands the concept of forward head posture. So the two receptors that are mostly contributing, because we're talking about the sensory receptors, right? That are mostly contributing to forward head posture are your eyes and your jaw. Mostly the jaw and the eyes. So we're not going to ask you to become a dentist. Don't be intimidated by the jaw. Okay. We're not asking you to stick your fingers in people's mouth. We're just asking you to be aware of how the teeth fit together, because it's going to give you an additional piece of information, right? You're like a puzzle solver here. You want to know what's causing the problem. You're finding the solutions. So doing some eye exercises or having your clients put their tongue on the palate, disconnect their teeth, not clench their teeth, you should see, not always, but you should see changes in the forward head posture, which at that point you can start incorporating exercises to strengthen your back muscles. Let's take the example of an anterior pelvic tilt. An anterior pelvic tilt, the two sensory receptors that are mostly contributing are the feet and the jaw. They're going to push your upper body forward. So what are you going to do? Well, you can do some foot proprioceptive drills, and you could maybe massage your jaw muscles, or just, we massage our shoulder. Why not just go in here a little bit and then kind of retest? As a matter of fact, if you just massage someone's jaw in a lying position and check hip flexion pre and post, the hip flexion will improve through jaw or masseter manipulation. It's not going to last, but it's going to allow the practitioner to show their clients that there is a link. And once you've piqued someone's curiosity, what will they say? Give me more.
Yes.
I want to understand.
Yeah. Cool. That's really
And
cool.
we then need to multiply this by 335 million people, and we will start creating changes in the world.
Right.
No, that's really actionable. I mean, so just a little anecdote. I was thinking when you're talking about the massaging the jaw and how it affects the hips. Do you know, like I love learning about this stuff, and I really geek out on it. But I have 4 horses out in the back here, and do you know who really knows this stuff is horse body workers. The horse body worker will look at your horse and say, "Your horse's hips are out. Have you had its teeth done?" And you'll say, "Oh no, I haven't. Good point. We'll put it together." But in the human body, it's like, well, my back's sore, I must have slept funny or something. And it, we just do not apply any elegance to the human body. We're living in this thing, right? But so one of the examples you gave was, you can get your client to do this little head posture thing, the tongue and the teeth, and then when they feel better, now have them do their back strengthening exercises, because now this part of their body is at least set up to biomechanically pull better.
Yes.
Right. That's really interesting. That's so easy and you know what? I'll tell you what else. If I was the client and my personal trainer said, okay, so we're going to do some rows, but before we do, I need you to do this thing with your jaw. I'd be like, oh, my trainer really knows what they're doing. I've never had a trainer say that to me before. This person is a real expert, real whiz.
Is that
right? That's
yes.
cool.
100%.
I just want to say I love that you're doing that with animals, and we do apply these concepts with animals here back in Montreal. So my goal is to try with horses. I've kind of touched the tip of the iceberg, but I'm sure it would be huge. So many things to do, so little time. What can I say? But we do apply these concepts to animals as well, and that's extremely powerful also for animals. A little bit more challenging, but extremely powerful. But I love what you said. All of those things are absolutely mandatory and crucial. And I hope it makes sense to the listeners. And if anything, I hope that don't be intimidated by the word neurology. All that we're doing is that we're stimulating different body parts to help different brain parts talk to each other. That's all we're doing. And if those different brain parts are talking better to each other, then the outcome is you will move better, you will feel better. And if we feel better and if we move better, then we're going to be in a good mood, and we start to create changes on a global scale.
Yeah. Well, earlier you touched on this point. It's like you're trying to figure out how to market this. Well, everyone's in pain. So if you go to market as like, I'm going to help you move without pain. And by the way, I'm not going to get into the weeds on this, but I went to a movement specialist here for some pain I was having. He doesn't do the postural stuff that you do, but it's not different than what you're talking about. He had me do some exercises that repatterned my brain. And I walk in with this injury and I couldn't weight bear. I couldn't lunge or squat, couldn't weight bear at all for 2 years. He did some brain patterning stuff that felt really like he actually, not to get into the weeds, but he figured out my brain forgot that my left glute existed. And so he got some actual touching on my leg to get my brain to remember that my leg was there. And I lunged pain-free 15 minutes later after 2 years with an injury. He's like, you didn't have injury. It was just pain. It was just random pain that you'd patterned this pain and trained the brain to believe it was there. And we had to just reorient the brain. And I'm like, take all my money. I don't know what you just did, but I just moved pain-free for the first time in 2 years. I am in. It's huge. It's a huge selling feature.
Well, the brain-based approach, when a practitioner or healthcare practitioner understands that concept and kind of, taps into that brain, I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's a brain-body connection. I think also one of the lacking parts is when there's an injury in the body and we fix the body, and the injury kind of goes away and the joint heals, the injury remains in the brain.
Right.
That's why it's super important to retrain that brain-body connection. But Erin, what I want to add to that is that's always going to be superior to any type of rehabilitation. I can say this with confidence because I used to do it. I've tried it and I was not able to keep the results. I mean, they were recurring. I would see clients on a weekly basis. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you know that there's something that's better and faster out there, I think, it's in our human nature to want to tap into that. But if you now work with a brain-based approach, you're going through a completely different scale of rehabilitation and treatments and results, as you've just explained. But then if you want to solidify those changes and keep them in time, addressing the sensory receptors together for an extended period of time. I'm not saying for life here. I'm saying for those 10,000 hours at a time together at the same time, then you will really start creating changes at the level of the fascia and the joints. And this is where those results will stick in time. And we can say you are changing posture. We see people that are literally they're growing. They're growing because, in a flexor dominant posture, when you stand upright, well, you grow.
Yeah.
So they're not being crushed by gravity as much. So I think that where our system and methods, and that's why we created the tools that we created, because I was like, how can I, as a rehab specialist, how can I stimulate someone's nervous system all day long?
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible.
Right.
I mean, you went to see a professional, they worked on you for X amount of minutes, great, and then you went back home. But what happens the rest of the time? For example, if you have a foot imbalance, if you have a jaw imbalance, if you have an eye imbalance, remember what I was saying at the beginning of the conversation, you can't outsmart the nervous system. The results that you're going to get from the rehabilitation will make you squat when nothing else has worked. But if if that noise in your nervous system is still there, slowly but surely, it will start to undo all the good that was done. Add aging, stress, food, lifestyle, blah, blah, all to that. It's going to depend on how quickly you degenerate back.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is always to, this is where we created the tools to be able to create that stimulation without the cost of seeing a specialist.
Yeah.
This is where the therapeutic insoles come in. We do work with products. We've had those products developed by scientists based on published studies that have been existed since 1980 to understand how the skin of the foot changes or affects the way that the brain moves or the brain affects the muscles. So in essence, if you stimulate different parts of your foot, you can elicit a postural response in a human. We can have you move involuntarily, move forward, move backwards, turn left, turn right, or have the impression of levitating simply by using frequency or texture under your feet. And this holds true for humans.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it just so happens that there's a limit. There's a threshold here. Here it is. If you go beyond 3 millimeters, instead of stimulating, you inhibit.
Yeah. So I would love to dig into some of the products and maybe the programs that you've put together that either patients or coaches can tap into. And you mentioned one of them, these therapeutic insoles. Are these custom made insoles or are they specific insoles to address certain problems? Do you mind giving us some more detail?
Yeah, so no, the main difference is, again, in North America, when we talk about the feet, because we've separated the body into different body parts, we're thinking automatically arch support, thick and rigid insoles that are molded and built, right, custom made. These are the complete opposites. So therapeutic orthopedic insoles will inhibit proprioception. They will mechanically put your foot in a certain position. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. However, long term, it doesn't make sense to inhibit proprioception specifically under your feet because you walk with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gone the other way around. We said the threshold is what? It's 3 millimeters. We can record it. When we go above 3 millimeters in height, we inhibit proprioception to the nervous system. So our insoles are the opposite. They're super flexible. You can twist them. And they work with a frequency, which is basically two metals together that are creating a 90 hertz frequency. They are patent pending, and you will have the full results of how the functioning of the insoles work once the patent comes out. But the frequency stimulates those sensory receptors, and then those sensory receptors relay information back to your nervous system to have an effect on your inner ear stability and back muscles. So that's just one part of the problem. We also work with eye exercises. That's free. Anybody can do some eye exercises. And we've also incorporated different protocols to target and work with the jaw, specifically tongue posture, because we're not dentists. We're not going to move teeth. We're not going to change teeth, but we can work on the strongest muscle in the mouth, which is what? The tongue. So by addressing the feet and the eyes, you have an immediate impact on the vestibular system, and the vestibular system will then have an impact on your flexors and extensors. And essentially, it will inhibit flexion and activate extension. So by using those different types of tools, and which is what I do clinically. I mean, every single person that comes and sees me, and I'll put it this way, if you have pain, you have an imbalance with your feet and eyes. You cannot have pain without having an imbalance with your feet and eyes. It doesn't exist. If you have pain, you must address your foot and your eye at the same time for 6 weeks. However, if you do this right away, you can see improvements in the session. And then it's going to be up to you or your clients to decide, is it worth me investing in this? Yes or no? As you just said before, Erin, I was able to squat when I wasn't able to. I want to give you all my money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So
I got my credit card out right now. Like, don't worry, you get a sale today.
No, but you understand the concept. And then the courses are really for trainers to start applying these concepts and using those tools with their clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, personal trainers that take our programs do have discounted pricing, and there's perks to taking our programs. We try to help everybody. It's a win-win situation. My goal is to help people. And we understand that the people have businesses, and it is a business. We're entrepreneur. You're training people. You got to make money. You got to make a living from that. But just like you're selling vitamins and you're selling products, this would be an additional product that you can present to your clients and let them decide if it's worth the investment.
So what kind of background would a trainer or a coach need to have to really get a lot of value out of let's say, so for example, we've got, I don't know, thousands of coaches that have graduated from just our school, and a big chunk of them are certified personal trainers and they have extensive experience. And then there's others whose experience is really, maybe they have a kettlebell cert or a yoga certification, or maybe they have very little. It's really just their own sort of personal experience with movement. What kind of background or training should somebody have? I'm assuming there's likely content that's beneficial to everyone, regardless of their background, that you provide in your channels and things of that nature. But to sort of enroll in a course of yours, what kind of background do you suggest, or is there really no prerequisite?
There really isn't any prerequisite. We have made this accessible to anyone and everyone, and we have taken something that is extremely complex. The vestibular system alone, I've had doctors take my courses and say, we did not understand how the vestibular system works, and you've just broken it down in such a simple way so anyone can take this course. The idea is to give you tangible tools that as of Monday morning, regardless of the courses that you take, we offer courses at $97 all the way up to $5,500 and anything in between. And whether you take the $97 or the $55, you will walk away with something that you can start implementing as of Monday morning and create really sustainable changes with your clients. You don't need a background. We have PDFs. We are guiding you through the whole system. We have, webinars. We have an entire system that's put in place to help anyone or guide them in their practice so that they can get the same results that I've been getting since 2006. So if I could do it, anyone could do it. The only difference between me and someone else is I choose to do this solely 24/7 with all of my clients. I don't start anything before fixing someone's posture. And I found this to be life-changing for me, not only extremely beneficial, but changing people's lives. You can't buy that with money. When you have people walking out of your office bawling in pain, of joy because they were in pain, it really validates what you do. And this is the reason why I'm absolutely motivated to get this information out to as many people as possible, because it's life altering.
Yeah. Can I just ask one more sort of question? I know I want to be really respectful of time here, but we're talking a lot to the movement specialists, the personal trainers. Despite being a fitness professional, I don't really operate in that capacity. In my health coaching practice, I focus on nutrition and lifestyle only. People looking for weight loss, metabolic function, that kind of thing. Is there a link there too?
Well, there is, because think of it this way. If you have an imbalance in your body, okay, I'll take it back to simple stuff. You have an imbalance in your body, you're wearing out your joints prematurely. You have a little bit of inflammation that's going on in your body all the time. Well, inflammation leads to an increase in cortisol, and increase in cortisol leads to not being able to digest your proteins properly, not having enough. I'm giving the hydrochloric acid, affecting your digestive enzymes, and so on and so forth, and ultimately affecting your digestion. So we can make links with pretty much anything as far as fitness and health. If your digestion is affected, if you're constantly in fight or flight, if you're not sleeping well, I don't need to tell any trainer that if you're unable to sleep, you're not going to recuperate. It's the game over, right? So if you're in a constant state of stress because you have a postural imbalance and you're trying to meditate and do everything that's right, you're just swimming against the water here. Why not just make things a little bit?
Yeah, not to mention the mitochondrial fatigue you spoke about earlier. Somebody's trying to lose weight and your mitochondria are tapped. Good luck with that.
Because your cortisol is always up. So all of these things fit in together, and we didn't even tap into the children, because when we start to understand how the brain develops, and ultimately our goal as humans is to develop our frontal lobe, that's just, again, a whole other topic. But for mothers out there that have children or children or toddlers, this is where you can start creating, again, massive changes. Massive.
Wow, this was so great. I feel like we could talk for 2 more hours and still just barely scratch the surface. So we'll actually just have to have you back, like pick a topic that we can really dive deep into. We would, I personally would love that. And I think our audience would too. But in the meantime, share with everybody where they need to go to kind of find out more. And we'll go from there.
Yes. So you can find us on any platform under PosturePro. So we're very active. We're there everywhere. So social media.
Great. Then if they just Google PosturePro, you'll have a website that'll pop up, all that.
Everything pops up.
Awesome. Wonderful. This was fantastic. Thank you so much, Annette.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.